So, I guess I should start by saying, I never thought I'd be the kind of guy posting here. I've always been the everything's fine type, the one who brushes off little weird things in a relationship because, people have off days. But a couple of months ago, something happened that completely turned my world upside down. It all started with these tiny changes. Little things I didn't notice at first. My wife, let's call her Emily, started spending more time on her phone. Like, a lot more. She'd close her laptop or swipe her phone away whenever I came into the room. At first, I thought maybe it was work stress, but something about it just didn't sit right. Then came the accidental discoveries. I'm not proud of snooping. I really am not. But one night, her phone lit up on the counter while she was in the kitchen. There was a notification from a guy I didn't recognize, and honestly, the way he called her babe made my stomach drop. I put the phone down, tried to convince myself I was overreacting. But deep down, I knew something was off. I couldn't shake the feeling. It wasn't just the texts. Emily started acting differently around me. She was distant, distracted, almost guilty. And that little voice in my head, the one I'd ignored for months, started shouting. Something was happening, and I was about to find out exactly what. A few days after noticing the texts, I decided to follow my gut. Carefully, I told myself. I didn't want to blow things up if it was nothing, but I also couldn't ignore the gnawing feeling in my chest. One evening, Emily said she had to work late. I stayed home, pretending to binge some show, but I couldn't focus. Then it happened. Her laptop, left open on the kitchen counter, had a chat window still active. I swore I'd only glance, and I did, but what I saw made my heart stop. There were conversations, not just flirty, but personal. He was asking her about our secret plans, and she was responding with details I didn't know about. Plans. With someone else. I felt like someone had punched me in the gut. My mind raced. Why? How long? Was this happening right under my nose for months? I sat there for what felt like an eternity, staring at the screen, trying to process what I was seeing. And the worst part? A tiny, cruel part of me couldn't stop reading. I saw dates, places, little mentions of things only someone deeply involved would know. Every word was a knife twisting in slow motion. By the time she walked in, I had to force myself to look casual. "Everything okay?" she asked, smiling. That smile, God, it hurt. I nodded, said something stupid like, "Yeah, just tired, I guess." Inside, I was already planning the confrontation I knew was coming. A few days later, I couldn't take it anymore. I had to confront her, not in anger, but because I needed the truth. One evening, after dinner, I asked her to sit down. I could feel my hands shaking, but I tried to stay calm. "Emily, can we talk?" I started. Her smile faltered, just a little, like she knew this was coming. I took a deep breath. I saw some messages, and I need to know what's going on. Her eyes went wide, and for a moment, she looked scared. Then she laughed nervously. "What messages?" she asked, clearly trying to deflect. I didn't let her off the hook. I told her exactly what I saw, the texts, the conversations, the plans. At first, she tried to blame it on stress, on misunderstandings, on work friends. But the cracks started showing when I asked about the guy. And then she admitted it. Not everything, but enough to make my stomach twist. She said she felt neglected, that things had been drifting, and that she found comfort elsewhere. I sat there numb. I wanted to scream, to cry, to punch a wall, maybe all at once. But instead, I just listened. I wanted to hear everything, even if it hurt more than anything ever had. By the end of that night, I realized something important. This wasn't just about betrayal. It was about choices, about how people respond to problems in a relationship. And I knew I had a decision to make. After that night, I barely slept. I kept replaying her words over and over, her excuses, her admissions, the way she avoided eye contact when she realized how much she'd hurt me. Every little detail burned itself into my mind. I couldn't eat. I couldn't focus at work, and even walking down the street felt surreal, like I was living someone else's life. I tried talking to friends, but no one really understood. "Just forgive her," some said. "Everyone makes mistakes," others added. But it wasn't just a mistake. It was months of hiding, lying, and choosing someone else over me. That wasn't something you just forgive easily. And yet, part of me didn't want to give up. I kept thinking about all the good times we'd had, the late-night drives, the stupid inside jokes, the way she used to laugh at my terrible puns. Could that love survive this? Could I survive this? I started writing. I journaled every thought, every feeling, every memory. It helped me untangle the mess in my head, to see clearly what I was feeling versus what I wanted to feel. And slowly, a pattern emerged. This wasn't about revenge or anger. It was about deciding what I deserved. I realized that staying in a relationship built on lies would destroy me. And yet, leaving meant facing the unknown. Divorce, heartbreak, rebuilding a life I thought was stable, it terrified me. But something deep inside whispered, God has a plan for you. And I clung to that whisper like a lifeline. The next few days were a blur of tension and quiet observation. I started noticing even more little things, hidden phone notifications, hushed conversations when I walked into a room, excuses that didn't make sense. Every little detail added fuel to the fire in my chest, but I stayed calm on the surface. I decided to test the waters without being confrontational. I asked simple questions. Where were you yesterday? Or who were you talking to on the phone? And watched her reactions carefully. The hesitation, the slight twitch in her smile, the way she avoided specifics, it all confirmed what I already knew. Then came an unexpected twist. One evening, I got a message from that same guy, clearly forwarded or sent by mistake. He didn't know I was aware. In that message, he casually mentioned meeting her for something special later that week. My stomach dropped. The betrayal wasn't just in the past, it was ongoing. I couldn't believe it. I felt like the rug had been ripped out from under me all over again. That night, I sat alone in the dark, staring at the ceiling, feeling a mix of rage, sadness, and utter disbelief. But amid the chaos of emotions, one thing became painfully clear. I had to make a choice, and it couldn't wait any longer. The next day, I told myself I wasn't leaving without answers. I confronted Emily after dinner. In the living room, lights dimmed. I tried to keep my voice steady, but my hands were shaking. I know it's still happening, I said quietly. She froze, like I'd just hit her with a bucket of ice water. I know about the messages and the plans. Her face went pale. For a moment, she said nothing. Then she stammered, I didn't think you'd find out. It's complicated. Complicated. That word made me laugh. Bitterly, without meaning to. Complicated. I asked, voice low. It's betrayal, Emily. That's not complicated. That's lying, hiding, and hurting the person who loves you the most. She tried to explain, talking about loneliness, unmet needs, and mistakes. She begged me to forgive her, promised it would stop, said she wanted to fix things. Part of me wanted to believe her so badly it hurt. But another part, the part that had been screaming at me for months, knew that trust, once shattered this deeply, doesn't just fix itself. I realized then that this wasn't about anger anymore. It was about clarity. About deciding what I wanted my life to look like, and whether it included someone who could do this to me, even once. After that confrontation, I spent the next few days in a fog. I went through the motions at work, at home, everywhere, but inside, my mind was spinning. I kept asking myself, can I forgive this? Can I rebuild trust? Or is it already gone forever? Every little thing reminded me of her betrayal. The empty coffee mug she left on the counter, the way she laughed at a joke I didn't find funny. I saw ghosts of her lies everywhere. And yet, there was still that stubborn part of me. The part that wanted to hold on to the life we built together, the memories, the love I thought was unbreakable. I started thinking seriously about divorce. The word itself felt like a punch to the gut, but I couldn't ignore the truth. Staying in a relationship where trust was destroyed would be suffocating. I needed to protect myself, even if it meant making the hardest decision of my life. But then, something strange happened. Amid all the pain and anger, I began feeling a sense of clarity, almost like a whisper in my soul. God has a plan for you. I didn't fully understand it yet, but for the first time since discovering the betrayal, I felt a flicker of peace. Like maybe, just maybe, this heartbreak wasn't the end. It was the beginning of something I couldn't see yet. I knew I had a choice. Cling to the past, or step forward into the unknown. And that choice would shape everything that came next. Over the next week, I did something I hadn't done in months. I thought about me. Not us. Not what we used to have. Not what I wished could happen. Just me. I walked alone in the park, went to my favorite coffee shop, even spent an afternoon at the bookstore pretending I had no worries. For the first time, it felt like I was breathing again. I started weighing my options seriously. Could I stay and try to rebuild, knowing the betrayal was recent, ongoing even? Could I ever fully trust her again? Every what if I asked myself led to the same answer. It would be impossible. I couldn't live in a relationship where fear and doubt ruled my every thought. So, I made the decision. I wasn't going to react out of anger. I wasn't going to yell or storm out. I was going to approach this with clarity and intention. I told Emily that evening. I can't do this anymore, I said softly. We've reached a point where trust is broken too deeply. I need to step away for both our sakes. She begged. She cried. She promised she could change. But I held firm. I realized that sometimes love isn't about holding on. It's about letting go. That night, I went to bed feeling a strange mix of grief and relief. It hurt like hell, but for the first time in months, I felt like I was reclaiming control over my life. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of logistics and emotions. Packing up my things, dividing what belonged to whom, and figuring out the new normal was exhausting. Every drawer I opened, every photo I touched, reminded me of everything we used to have, and everything that was gone. But life has this strange way of throwing curveballs when you least expect them. One evening, as I was moving boxes out of our shared apartment, Emily showed up with a lawyer, something I didn't anticipate. She claimed she wanted to protect herself, but it quickly became clear she was trying to complicate things. I stayed calm. I explained that I wasn't looking for revenge, just clarity and closure. Surprisingly, she backed down, almost like she realized that her manipulations wouldn't work anymore. Even in this chaos, I felt a small sense of triumph, not over her, but over the fear and uncertainty that had been suffocating me for months. Amid all this, friends and family rallied around me. Some were shocked, others sad, but almost everyone said the same thing. You deserve better. Hearing that, seeing the support, made me realize how isolated I had felt in that relationship, and how strong I actually was, even if I hadn't realized it yet. By the end of the month, things were settled legally. Emotionally, that was a different story. The heartbreak lingered, like an unwelcome shadow. But for the first time, I felt a strange sense of hope. Once the legal stuff was mostly done, I finally had space to think and to feel. And let me tell you, feeling was messy. Some days, I cried uncontrollably. Other days, I laughed at something ridiculous, realizing how long it had been since I'd felt genuinely light. Then came the moments that surprised me the most. I started noticing little things about myself that had been buried under the stress of the relationship. I cooked for myself without feeling guilty, went on walks without distraction, even picked up an old hobby I'd abandoned years ago. Each tiny victory reminded me that life wasn't over. It was just different now. One morning, while sipping coffee and watching the sunrise, I had this weird, almost spiritual moment. I whispered to myself, God has a plan for you. And for the first time, I truly believed it. Not as a cliché, not as a hollow comfort, but as something real. Maybe everything that happened, the betrayal, the heartbreak, the chaos, was pushing me toward a life I wasn't ready to see yet. And that's when I realized something profound. The pain wasn't just punishment. It was a lesson, a push, a chance to rebuild, stronger and more aware than before. Rebuilding my life wasn't glamorous or sudden. It started small, making my bed without someone else's clutter in it, rearranging the apartment so it finally felt like mine, and saying yes to things I had avoided because of the relationship. And then came the unexpected moments. I ran into an old friend at a coffee shop, someone I hadn't seen in years. We talked for hours, laughing about the stupidest memories from college. It felt light, joyful, like I was remembering who I really was before all the chaos. Work started to feel meaningful again. I tackled projects I'd been putting off and discovered a side of myself that thrives under challenge. And, most surprisingly, I started opening up to the idea of meeting new people, not because I was looking to replace Emily, but because I was finally ready to let someone see the real me. The betrayal had left scars, sure, but it also left me with clarity. I was no longer the guy who ignored red flags or convinced himself that love alone could fix everything. I had learned, painfully, that self-respect isn't negotiable, and that sometimes God's plan doesn't look like what you expected, but it's still there, guiding you. A few weeks later, something completely unexpected happened. I ran into Emily at a mutual friend's small get-together. My first instinct was to turn around and leave, but curiosity, and maybe a strange desire for closure, kept me there. She looked different, not physically, but in the way she carried herself. There was no bravado, no excuses. She simply nodded at me, a quiet acknowledgement of everything that had happened. For a moment, neither of us spoke. And then she said something I didn't expect. "I'm sorry. Truly. I don't expect you to forgive me, but I hope you find happiness." It hit me harder than I thought it would. After that encounter, I began to feel something I hadn't felt in a long time: freedom. Not the dramatic, movie-style kind, but the quiet, steady sense that my life was finally mine again. I started making decisions for myself without second-guessing them or worrying about how Emily might react. I took a weekend trip alone, something I'd always wanted to do but never did. Hiking through a nearby trail, breathing fresh air, and just existing on my own terms felt liberating. I started picking up little things that made me happy: random hobbies, late-night drives, cooking meals I actually enjoyed. Every small act reminded me that life could be joyful again, even after heartbreak. And then came another surprise. I reconnected with friends I'd lost touch with, people who reminded me of who I was before all the drama. Their support, laughter, and perspective were like a balm on wounds I hadn't realized were still raw. For the first time, I felt like I wasn't just surviving. I was beginning to thrive. I learned something crucial. The end of one chapter doesn't mean life stops. It means a new one is starting, and while it might be unexpected or scary, it's still full of potential. By now, I had a lot of time to think about what had happened and what it taught me. One of the hardest lessons was realizing that love alone isn't enough. Trust, respect, and honesty are the foundation. Without them, no relationship, no matter how passionate or long-standing, can survive. I also learned that pain has a purpose, even when it feels unbearable. The betrayal, the sleepless nights, the tears, they forced me to confront who I really was, what I truly deserved, and what kind of life I wanted. It wasn't easy, but it was necessary. And the most surprising lesson of all: forgiveness isn't about them. It's about me. Letting go of the anger and resentment freed me to move forward without carrying a burden I didn't need. I didn't forget, but I stopped letting it define me. I realized that God's plan for me wasn't to punish me with heartbreak. It was to guide me towards self-respect, clarity, and the courage to start over. It was a plan I couldn't have seen in the moment, but now, looking back, it feels undeniable. Looking back, I can honestly say that this was the hardest period of my life, and also one of the most transformative. I lost someone I loved deeply, but in the process, I found myself. I learned that my worth isn't tied to someone else's choices, and that life can surprise you in ways you never imagined. For anyone going through something similar, here's what I'd say: pay attention to the signs, trust your instincts, and don't ignore your own feelings. It's okay to be hurt, to grieve, to feel lost, but also remember that your future is still yours to shape. Don't settle for less than honesty and respect. Most importantly, believe that there's a plan, even if you can't see it yet. Sometimes, what feels like the end is really a beginning. And sometimes, losing someone isn't about them. It's about giving yourself the chance to find a life that's truly worth living. So yeah, God has a plan, and I finally see mine.